let's switch over and have a look at context-aware access. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the call, it's an Education Plus feature, probably one of the least used Education Plus security features I see out there. So I thought it'd be useful to go back through this today and look at some example use cases of how you can utilize this in your school. Essentially, with context-aware access, you can build up rules around who or what devices can access different data or different Google services depending on the context. So that could be the user's location, so whether they're on campus or off campus, or what country they're logging in from, or it could be device attributes as well. So it could be the version of that device, whether it meets your security recommendations, or it could be based on other attributes such as has the user signed in via two-step verification, or what time of the day it is. And you can manage all of this within your admin console by going into the security page, access and data control, and context-aware access. But before we get into this, just a couple of foundational things with context-aware access which you need to have in order to make full use of it. So firstly, like I already mentioned, it's an Education Plus feature. So your users need to have the Education Plus license assigned to them. If you're using device-based rules, and I'll come back to some more detail in a minute, but if you're using device-based rules, you need to either have basic mobile management turned on in your admin console, or you also need, for desktop devices, you will need the Chrome endpoint verification extension as well. And I'll show you those features in a minute and how you can get those set up if you don't already have those. But let's just look at some examples first of all of what you can do with context-aware access. So first of all, let's actually go into here, assign access levels. And I just want to go in here first of all to show you the full range of apps which you can control with context-aware access. So it applies to all of the core Google Workspace apps. So things like Calendar, Drive and Docs, Gmail, Google Chat, Meet, and so on. You can also use it with Gemini now and Notebook LM to control access to those apps. But you can also use it to control access to third-party apps and single sign-on apps. So if you have single sign-on configured and you have users sign on using their Google credentials to another app you've got at your school, you can also use context-aware access to control access to that. So now let's look at some access levels. I've got some ready-made here I've created earlier, but let's just look at how you create a brand new one first of all. And I'm going to make a really simple one. Let's call this one UK access only. Then down here, I can define my conditions. You can either select basic or advanced here. We'll look at advanced in a minute. Let's just start with basic. And I'm going to add a condition. And then I can say whether I want the app to meet this condition or not meet this condition. In this case, I want it to meet this condition. And from here, I can select either IP subnet and define an IP address. I can select a location. I can select from device attributes as well, and this could be whether a device is admin approved, whether it's company owned, does it have screen lock configured, or is it an encrypted device? I can select from different OS versions as well and define the minimum version of that OS. Or I can also link to another access level I've created earlier and then kind of combine different access levels into an overarching one. But in this case, I'm going to select location, and from my list of locations, let's find the United Kingdom. As you can see, I could select multiple if I want to as well, and then press create. And then once we've got an access level, then we can assign it to an app. So let's select assign to apps, and on the left-hand side, I can either apply this to my whole organization, I could apply it to a particular OU, or a particular group as well. But let's just apply this to my staff OU, and let's make it so that staff can only access Gmail, for example, if they're in the UK. So let's go now and select the access level we just created. So as you can see here, the scope is staff. We've got Gmail selected there. Now let's find our access level up here, and let's select this one. I always recommend starting off in monitor mode only. It just writes that to a log then before you fully roll that out, just to make sure your access level works as you would expect. You don't want to get any surprises there and have people unintentionally locked out. When you're ready, then you can make it active. When it is in active mode, you've got two options here. You can either block access, in which case that staff member then can't access Gmail if they're outside of the UK, or you could just warn about that and not actually block it, but I just get a warning message. Now, that could be useful maybe if their device doesn't meet your security standards and you want to give people a notification first before enforcing that policy. But let's just select block in this instance and press save. So that's a really simple one. Let's look at a more complex example now. So I'm going to go back to my context-aware access page, and let's look at some ready-made ones I've created earlier. So let's start with this one, device version requirements. So in this one, we're looking at devices which meet all these requirements. And I've listed every OS type my users are using down here. So I've got Chrome OS, I've got Windows, Mac OS, Linux, iOS, and Android. And for each one, I've defined the minimum version. Now, you might remember earlier, I said you need to have a couple of things set up for the device requirements to work properly. Let me just show you where those live now. So for mobile devices, you need to make sure under your mobile and endpoints and settings, and under universal, it's really tucked away the setting. Under general, in here, if we go into mobile management, you need to have basic mode enabled at least. Advanced mode is great as well, but you need at least basic mode enabled, or setting it here under the custom menu, you can select basic for both iOS and Android. And this doesn't require an agent on the device, it's completely agentless. But what it does enable you to do then is to force some basic password requirements. If you want to, you can turn it off. But for context-aware access, it gives us visibility then of the device types users are using. So we can see whether it's an Android device or an iOS device. We can see the version of that device as well, which of course context-aware access needs to know about in order for that to work. For desktop devices, you just need to make sure you have deployed the Chrome endpoint verification extension. So it's this extension just here. And what this does, it deploys to Chrome browsers and it just reports back on the device version, Chrome browser version as well, and other device attributes, which are useful then for using in context-aware access rules. So let's get back into our policy. Just wanted to explain that it's two important requirements which context-aware access device rules won't work without. Okay, so let's go back into our access level. So this is the one we're just looking at, the device version requirements. I've listed all my device versions in here, but we can take this a step further. As we're just looking at the device version, actually, it's also useful to look at what browser users are using to make sure we're only letting users in if they're using an up-to-date and secure version of Chrome. So in this case, I'm using the advanced mode using Google's Common Expression Language, which Google have a full article about here actually, which I can share later in the chat, which provides lots of examples and different attributes and language you can use in there. But here's an example. So in this one, just to break it down, what's happening, I am referencing another access level, the device version one we just looked at. And then I'm also looking to see, is this Chrome browser managed, either a managed browser or a managed profile? And also I'm looking at the minimum version, and I'm only allowing access if it's a minimum of version 136 of Chrome. And then what this means is once we enforce this access level, our users would need to be signed in to the Chrome browser, and their device needs to meet our minimum versions we've set out there. So then let's go and deploy this access level. Again, going back to assign access levels, then we can select who we want to apply that to. So I'm going to apply this to staff again and make it so that staff using Google Drive need to be on a device which meets our security standards. So here we can select, we've already got the UK one in monitor mode. Let's also select this one, the secure device and browser level, and enforce that straight away. And we could just warn about that at first, and then maybe in a few weeks set that to block mode when we're ready to. So that's another example. Let's look at another couple of examples now, which I think you'll find interesting. So if we go back into context-aware access, now one of the things I mentioned earlier, you can also base it off of other attributes, such as, you know, has a user signed in, or is a user using two-step verification? Or a question I had recently is a school wanted to only allow students Gemini access during school hours. Okay, so to do that, we can do that with context-aware access. I've got a policy here, which is pretty straightforward, really. We're looking at the time of day. Actually, no, first of all, we're looking at the day of the week, just making sure it's between Monday and Friday. And then we're looking at the time of day and checking it's between 8 o'clock in the morning and 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So if that access level was met, then Gemini access would be enabled. If it's outside of those hours, the user would get a warning message. And that warning message, in terms of how that looked, let me just bring up Gemini now on my student account and show you what that looks like. It's working actually. Let's modify the access level, because those the first call was much earlier. It was before our school hours. So let's now go back and change this. You can see how these policies can be adjusted. So let's make this, let's say school is starting at 11 o'clock today, and save this. And now hopefully if I go back to this page in a few moments, I should get a block message here. Always a risk on a live call. Sometimes it takes a few moments for the, there we go, here we go. Now I've got the block message, but I can no longer access this. And we can customize this message as well. So if I jump back into my context-aware access page, this time let's go to general settings. In here, I can set a custom message for my users, but I can also create a remediation message here as well. And if I enable this, it kind of surfaces for information about the policy to the user, highlighting which policy they've not met. So in this case, it's the time of day, or it could be their device version or their location. So you could surface that information into that custom message as well. So let's now look at one more access level, which I think will be interesting for you. So the other cool thing you can do with context-aware access is combine it with your data loss prevention rules. So this enables you then to add extra protection to your school sensitive data. So for instance, I have got a data protection rule here. If I go into this section, and this protection rule is looking at confidential data. So let me just break down what's happening in this rule. So it's going to be applied to my entire domain. And this rule is going to block downloads on devices which aren't admin approved. And we're just applying this to Google Drive files. And for our Google Drive files, we're checking if it has got a classification label applied. And that classification label is called file sensitivity. And we're looking just for marked as confidential. That's one example. We could be looking at the contents of that file as well, and whether it contains a passport number or driving license number or bank account details. So we could look at that information as well. But in this case, I'm just going to look for the confidential label. And then down here, I'm then assigning this access level to it, where we're looking at whether a device has been admin approved in the admin console and whether it's going to meet that requirement. And then on the actions page, I am saying that anything which meets those two conditions, we are going to download, disable, download, print, and copy. And how that looks to the user. So if I go in here now, I've got a Google Sheet here. Currently, download is enabled. I can email this. I can copy data from this sheet. But if I now go in here and apply that label, so if I go over to here, apply my label, and let's apply the file sensitivity label and mark this as confidential. And now you can see here we've got a confidential label applied, and it's instantly applied that policy for me. So now if I go back into my file menu, I can no longer copy this document. I can no longer email this or download this document as well. So good example there of how you can combine context-aware access with data loss prevention. Two things I'd highly recommend you look at implementing on your own domain to help safeguard access to your sensitive data, but also to different Google apps as well. Cool. So I think I saw a couple of questions pop up in the chat. So let's take that now. Mohammed, yeah, why are the two options for the UK only in location? So there's only two options there. Let me just show you. That's merely because I created the same rule earlier today in the morning call, hence why there are two listed here. So that's the only reason why I've just done this demo multiple times and created multiple rules called the same thing. So yeah, that's the reason why. You can create as many as you need to. Question from Wolfgang. Maybe we're pointing out SAT, PSAT conversation as people may be running these soon. It seems that the updated stable version is necessary. Could you come on, if you don't mind, Wolfgang, come on camera and just provide a bit more context about SAT and PSAT?
No, it was just the conversation in the Google community.
Oh yes, I remember now. Actually,
Melissa Sanogo asked. She had issues yesterday because she couldn't run them, and apparently they need a well, she said 140.xxx stable version, but that's the Chrome browser, I'm assuming, because the Chrome, and she's running it on Chromebooks. So just anybody who's running Chromebooks, you might want to check out that thread. We've solved it in the end, but it was just an update basically in the end. But yeah,
I know, I do remember now. Yeah, thanks for sharing it. So yeah, absolutely. Keep your Chromebooks up to date. So things you might run into there is either your Chrome update policy. You want to make sure that devices are updating to the latest version, and also just making sure all your devices are currently within their auto update expiry date, because Chromebooks only get a limited amount of time, which is 10 years, still quite a long time, but you only get a limited amount of time for updates. And actually, one more thing you just reminded me of, which I just wanted to highlight as well. So if you want to get started with context-aware access, a good way on your domain is to go into this page, into your context-aware access page, and you should see this button, View Recommendations. And this, in this page, Google looks at your users' access kind of data, how users are accessing different Google apps, and it makes suggestions about what context-aware access conditions you might want to explore. And it's different on every domain I look at. So for instance, on this domain, 10% of Android devices are running an outdated OS. Sometimes it highlights Mac OS if you've got a lot of devices on running old versions of Mac OS, or maybe you've got only a very small number of people logging on from different countries. It might highlight that. And this gives you a good starting point. So then we can quickly click on Review Recommendation. We can see, if I re-authenticate, more details about that recommendation. And then we could start it off in monitor mode, collect some more analytics about how it might work before rolling it out more widely. So really good place to start there if you are interested in exploring this feature. Cool. Any questions now? Yeah, where can we manage labels? Yeah, good question, Ali. So let me share my screen and I will show you how you can manage labels for your domain. Actually, let me just bring up a different domain where I've got some good examples configured for you. So it's going to take a moment. But yeah, labels, definitely another Education Plus feature, which is fairly underutilized, I'd say. And I'd like to see more people utilize this feature because it's a very powerful feature. And also works well now with Gemini. So you can actually have Gemini label your content for you, and you can train your own custom Gemini model to do that. So labels in the admin console sits under security, access and data control, and label manager. So in here, I've got a few examples I've created earlier. So this one is just that file sensitivity label we looked at earlier. It's got a few different levels ranging from confidential through to public. And the nice thing about this label is then we can associate different rules with this. And that could be a DLP rule, like we looked at earlier, or it could be a Google Vault rule. So maybe confidential data we want to retain indefinitely and make sure that's never deleted. We could do that with Google Vault. Likewise, we could use DLP to block external sharing. So that's useful. But it can also have other types of labels as well. So for instance, I've got a label here for tracking policy information. This one, I've got different fields added. So things like department, owner, review date, and so on. And how this looks to the user is previewed here. So here we can select the department that policy belongs to, who the owner is, when it next needs to be reviewed, and so on. And the advantage of this label is then it shows up in that Google Doc in the sidebar, but it's also useful if you're searching for this data as well. So if I jump into my Google Drive, for instance, go into my Drive, add a search filter, I've got a label menu here, and then I can search for my policy label and maybe anything with a department of IT, hit search, and it will quickly return those for me. If you're managing IT in education, then please do check out our playlist for more Google IT admin videos. But when it comes to keeping your school safe and secure, videos aren't always enough. Our security audit and remote admin services enables you and your IT teams to focus on what matters most. This service includes a direct chat space with us, where you can ask questions about Google Workspace and get our expert advice and guidance, particularly on priority issues. We're always happy to jump on a Google Meet and help you resolve that problem. Our service also includes a full, comprehensive security audit every year, ensuring your domain is safe and secure and free from cyber threats. So if you want more details and would like to get started, then please do click on the link in the video description now. Thanks for watching.